Welcome back to Off Script, the podcast where we go beyond the scenes, beyond the industry jargon, and straight into the raw, unfiltered stories of filmmaking. I'm Fallon Goodson, joined by my incredible co-host Sky Lopez. This week on Off Script, we're joined by actor, director, and Crescent City Stage co-founder Michael Newcomer, a longtime member of both Actors Equity and SAG-AFTRA. We talk about his journey from LA and New York City to the heart of New Orleans theater. The power of saying no, the myth of the starving artist, and what makes Tiny Beautiful Things such a resonant story right now. A must listen for anyone passionate about building community through art. Now let's go off script. Okay, today we have Michael Newcomer, and we're so excited because we love Michael. Michael, would you give us just a little 30-second intro about yourself for the audience?
Sure. My name's Michael Newcomer. I am a 25-year member of Actors Equity Association, 22 member of SAG-AFTRA. I live in New Orleans. I own a theater company, Crescent City Stage. I'm a pretty traditional non-New Orleanian who arrived in New Orleans because of a New Orleans girl. And I've been here for about 10 years. And I'm actually recording this in our brand new studio on Magazine Street. So I'm excited to be on my first interview in the studio space, which is exciting.
It's such a great location, and it's such an
Yeah.
amazing space.
Thank you. Agreed.
Okay, well, we're going to do some icebreaker type questions at first.
Okay.
So, what is one performance mishap or backstage moment that still lives rent free in your head?
Oh, gosh. I have too many. Probably my favorite go-to was in college. I was playing Thisbe in Midsummer Night's Dream. And I had like big rouge cheeks, and I had a custom halter top with two soccer balls as my fake Thisbe boobs. And in college, this theater was like a 900-seat auditorium, and everybody who was in Intro to Theater was required to come see the shows. So you would have like every jock who never stepped foot in a theater, everybody was coming to the show. So we always had full houses. And one night, one of the soccer balls popped out, and it bounced like slow, like a cartoon slow bounce off the stage and into the lap of a football player who grabbed it and held it up. Of course, associating the soccer ball with a woman's, and then he looked up at me and I looked up at him, and I just had this moment and I just I giggled, and I had a dress on too, and I got off the stage and I just held up my hands, and he handed me back the soccer ball. And it was, uproarious laughter that of course we could it was never replicated again, but I'll never forget. I was a young actor at the time, and just the freedom of, it is what live theater, right? You never know. So that's a good mishap, I guess.
That's great.
That sounds hilarious. Oh my goodness.
So we've never done this before, but this is another little icebreaker. So if you could give us a movie trailer version of your career,
Oh gosh.
did it all begin?
A movie trailer version of my career. It starts with, the mid-20s kid lost in life with no discernible corporate talent and accidentally stumbling into a theater, and a guy by the name of Chris Coleman taking a chance and then embarking on what has now been a 30-year career because of somebody who saw something that I didn't know I had. And so, sort of obnoxiously moody music underneath, and then fade into not quite Broadway lights or red carpets, but just a really good journeyman career. Yeah, that would be the movie trailer. It has nothing to do with my beautiful wife or children or that whole other side of my life, but from the entertainment perspective, that would be the trailer. That's
Amazing.
A good question.
So the other question that I had was, what brought you to New Orleans? And we know what brought you to New Orleans, but what is the weirdest thing about New Orleans that you also love?
Yeah, so I've lived all over the world, blessedly. My father was in the Army, and so I've had a really great life. I've got to live in a lot of states. I've gotten to live in other countries. New Orleans is a place, I've lived here the longest I've lived anywhere, and I have a very distinct love-hate relationship with the city. It's a place I cannot figure out. I'm told often that you just have to give in and let her love you, and then it'll be fine. That's not who I am, but it's not my personality. We landed in New Orleans really out of this, pre-COVID, so 2014, 15. New York was a grind. It was a good grind, but for us, it wasn't a place to think about if we were going to be lucky enough to have children We wanted a yard. It was just New York was wearing on us, and so we moved here on a whim. And when we landed, I knew nothing about New Orleans. New Orleans was never on my bucket list of cities to go to. Like, with all due respect to New Orleans, like Paris and London and Rio and Berlin were, New Orleans was like, okay, that's a cool, I had no association with it, right? I never came here in college. I didn't stumble across New Orleans on a cross country trip. So when we landed here, I had a really good career that kind of came to a screeching halt because New Orleans was its own special thing, right? And so what I love about this city is I love looking at and being around the people who are so unabashedly pro New Orleans. And what I hate about the city are those very same people who can't take a step back and say, look, we can have all of this amazing stuff, but we can also have all of this other amazing stuff that we don't even think we can have, because that's sort of like fear of, if you take this on, it takes away this kind of thing. I'm not one of those people that loves this place. I struggle with it as a business owner, as a parent, as somebody who considers themselves a little bit of a political junkie. Like, the machine rolls on, but it leaves so much behind. And I've never quite experienced that. Well, no, that's not true. I've never experienced that anywhere else I've lived in my life. And so that's part of the reason why we've settled here and continue to stay, is because I feel like if we're going to be successful, it's going to be in a place like New Orleans, because we're not competing against an infrastructure or an institutional knowledge base that is never going to accept what we're trying to do. Yeah. So it's kind of it's not either or, it's and but, right?
Mhm.
I love New Orleans, but I also don't love New Orleans. But not New Orleans in this sort of ethos New Orleans, right? There's the city's amazing, the food is amazing, the music is amazing, but there's so much about it that we just kind of look past because there's another festival to go to. Anyway, I can go on and on about that, but that's my answer.
Yeah, it's a really funny thing because it's a place where you can create, but it's almost like you have to convince the people that it's what they also need and that it's going to be good for them in ways. And
Yeah.
the opportunity is there, but you have to insist the opportunity. And then I think it'll all work out anyways for y'all, because what you're doing is great. I find that even in my own Reiki practice, like when I
Mm-hmm.
came to New Orleans and started doing Reiki, that people were like, why do I need Reiki? And
Mm-hmm.
over time it's built, and it's a thing that they didn't know that they needed or wanted, but it's there, and now it's slowly building and people are like, oh wow, I really do feel something, it's like that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. The word
Yeah.
that comes up for me a lot is curiosity. That,
Hmm.
as artists, as actors, the without curiosity, I'm not so sure how we're creating interesting art, because the need for you to be able to curiously investigate and then replicate something else, somebody else's words or body or movement or emotion. And I find that setting aside the sort of national political climate, setting aside the entertainment industry's shareholder situation, which is why we don't have production, that our lives in this modern age of technology, right? We're having this conversation on a platform where I can see you and you're recording. We're in the comfort of our home. There's been such a disconnect from the way that we engage. And I really feel like curiosity is gone. We're not curious anymore. We're comfortable. We're, for the most part, safe. We have access to good food. We have access to good restaurants. We have access to music if we want. And so there's really no need to be curious anymore, because you can just open your phone up and have the answer to anything. And or you can open an app up, and that app will within seconds create anything for you. We don't have to think anymore. We don't have to engage. And so I think, to your point, Sky, which is any business that puts something into the marketplace, if it doesn't sell and make a profit, the marketplace is telling you it doesn't need to be there, right? And I think for Crescent City Stage, we're in that kind of midpoint of, we think the market wants this, but we're not getting the proof in the concept yet. And so how long can we sustain that? And for us, and me, going back to curiosity, what I want people to feel curious about what we're doing. And because I think if you feel curious about it, then, to your Reki example, well, I'm curious. I'll give this a shot. And then you find, oh, I do need that. I do want that. And then I tell my friend that they want or need that. And then that's how, that's how restaurants go. That's how ice cream shops go, right? It's
Yeah.
all about word of mouth and curiosity. And I think in a lot of ways, our entertainment sector in New Orleans has really lost its desire to be curious, because it's not even feast or famine anymore, right? It's famine. It's like famine day in and day out, lack of opportunity. And so you get kind of siloed in that.
Well, hopefully we can change that, build some curiosity. Curiosity is a great word.
Hmm.
I love that because I mean that's the whole point of art, right? So you're curious enough to want to explore an aspect of yourself. That's what we do as actors, right? And we hold that mirror up to the audience as like, does this feel familiar or does it feel like something you want to know more about? And I think that's the beauty of what we do, even in plays, film, even in music, right?
Hmm.
And we experience a lot here in New Orleans because, it's predominantly a music city. But I know that there's a lot of people that are trying to create more of the other aspect of entertainment with plays and film
Hmm.
and whatnot. So I know that there's people working really hard, like all of us,
Yeah.
to make that kind of show the people that it's a thing that they probably want to see because that's what I love about film. It incorporates so many art forms under one umbrella. We have the music, we have the visuals, we have the actor, we have the emotions. It's all just so lush.
Yeah. Art in this sort of umbrella collective sense of
Mm-hmm.
art, it never harms communities,
Mm,
right?
right.
Because it may harm in the sort of emotional sense, or it can be harmful with the wrong intent. But as a general rule, the existence of art in our daily lives only uplifts our experience as humans, right? The art that we see on those, I guess they're like streetlight mechanicals when you're going up and down Napoleon, right? And now they've got those artists who've created these incredible murals
Mm,
on those, whatever those are called. That's art, right? The mural along Chapatula Street, it's beautiful art. The music that you hear, the trumpet or the saxophone guy who's on St. Charles in front of
Hmm.
Superior Grill, that, the sounds of New Orleans, that we experience it every day. And the problem is that, and curiosity is one side of that, but also art is commerce, right? That we give it away free so much because as artists, we have been taught that our value is in the ability to even do it,
mm,
right? That, oh, you're lucky you get to be in a play. How wonderful.
mm-hmm.
Except so part of the other thing with Crescent City Stage is creating that community, curiosity, understanding that, yes, but there's art and commerce, and the two have to meet, because the people that you are enjoying as artists cannot support themselves.
Yeah.
And if you can't support yourself in any industry, then that industry crumbles. And so we have this really imbalanced expenditure in a city that prides itself on being so culturally forward,
Mm-hmm.
where we just have this expectation that, there's just going to be murals on the walls without understanding that somebody has to pay for that, right? There's got to be a permit. You got to buy the paint. You got to have the hours. You have to have the creativity. Yeah. So I think it's the commerce part of it is the part that's missing here, that you find it's all true. This is true everywhere, but in other cities, it's a little more evolved, I guess. There's more infrastructure that can support more than just the musicians, who aren't being paid well, by the way. They're not making a ton of money grinding it out on Frenchman Street and in the quarter every night for the
Yeah.
tourists. So how do we uplift that? Because ultimately it just creates better art, I think. If you feel sustained in your life and you can go on a vacation, or you can take a day off, or you can go out to have a nice meal because you don't have to grind out for tips, you're just going to be a better artist, I think.
Yeah. It allows that relaxation that you
Hmm.
need, that stillness that an artist needs to like tap in more into their creativity, into their imagination. And so I completely agree with you on that. And I think the world as a whole, or the word artist as a whole, has this thing of just like it's been this paradigm of like, if you're an artist, you're going to be a starving artist. And I think this is actually worldwide. It's not even just here in New Orleans. I remember when I first told my parents I was going to go into acting, the terror in their eyes were just like, they were scared for me. You're just going to be a vagabond on the street. But that was their conception of what an artist did, is just like, you're going to be poor and all this stuff. And society reflects that back at you in so many ways. And it's just like trying to, like, how do we shift that Like you said, there are some infrastructure in other cities that hold this kind of to a different esteem. And it's like, how do we shift that dynamic into showing that art is so crucial for humanity, for living and existing? How do you shift that to support the artists and what they're doing? Because what they do is so deep. So it shifts perspectives, it shifts how someone feels. It's hard to put a price on that.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you put a price on that? And I know people have their own value and all that stuff like that. But I just so value the concept of being an abundant artist. And I'm still working through that myself because it's
Mm-hmm.
something that I've held so the opposite of and have been shown the opposite. And so, like, how do we shift that perspective on a
Mm-hmm.
societal level? Right. I don't have the answer, but
Well, I think a couple things. It's interesting. I'm probably considerably older than the two of you, maybe as old as the two of you combined, but I remember being in my mid 20s and thinking this, getting paid $300 a week and thinking this, how do what are you going to do in life with that? Because you're not getting benefits with that. You're not getting health care. You're not getting paid time off. So I like the word abundance, but I've always thought it's about valuation, right?
Yeah.
Lawyers don't think of themselves as abundant lawyers. They think of themselves as hourly value, right? Here's
Mm-hmm.
my hourly rate. This is my value to you. And so I love the word abundance, but I think abundance makes it seem like we're being greedy, or it resonates with, well, you want more than you're worth. And so, yes, of course we do. But let's take it back a step. It's the value proposition to yourself. And if
Mm-hmm.
you say to the marketplace, if you say to your friend who's a producer, yeah, I know you're struggling to do this thing that you're putting together. I'll work for free for you. Just give me credit. Then they do that again because they're still struggling. Then they do that again because they're still struggling. Now all of a sudden your value proposition has become their value proposition because of this fear that we have that if we say no, there'll never be another opportunity. That if we say no, we're losing out on an opportunity. And I
Mhm,
would I would say to folks, you're not losing out on work. If you're doing this for free, that's called volunteering.
mhm,
You can volunteer till you're blue in the face. And I think all of that stuff is valuable. I think working for free for your friends creates opportunity. It's fun. Sometimes great art comes out of it. And I would say all of the time great art comes out of it because of the experience. But in that sort of big picture economic sense, if we continually show the general public that what we do it because we love it. We just want the opportunity. There's no reason that they're going to think differently
mm,
because people don't understand. They look at Tom Cruise or like Ryan Coogler's on the map right now with Sinners and like getting so much backlash about his deal. And I'm like, you go, Ryan,
mm,
for negotiating that deal. That's a value proposition right there. It's not
mm,
because he's black or he writes black stories. It's because he's an artist who values himself and says, no more of this, right? Now, do we all want to have that authority? Of course we do. And with Crescent City Stage, what I want to do is uplift people and say,
mm,
you have that authority because you're volunteering is one thing, and by all means volunteer. But if you're going to go to work, get paid to do that work.
Yeah.
You know?
I did something the other day for Tulane and fully thought it was a volunteer situation. And they emailed me and they're like, fill out this W-9 and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm getting paid for this? And then I
Yes.
was like, I can't believe I even thought for a second, should I just say no? And I was like, no, Fallon, don't go into that mentality. Exactly like a lawyer, anyone else. The guy that does my taxes refers to SAG as a starving artist guild. And I was like, that's very telling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a great day rate if you get it, right? But if
Yeah.
you're getting one day rate every 9 months, that's maybe half of a rent check in New Orleans. So yeah, it's interesting because when I talk to younger artists, and even in the play, Tiny Beautiful Thing, Sugar says, no, no is powerful. No is yours to give. Right. And people equate no with the end of something. And while that's true, right, structurally, language wise, no is an end point, right? There's nothing that comes after no. No is done. It's finite. It's an empowering thing because it says not only to the person asking you to do this thing, but it says to yourself that I value myself. This is less about valuing your friends and buddies and who want to, produce. It's about saying to yourself, what do I want? And if what you want to do is work for free, then by all means work for free.
mhm,
But then then don't have a different expectation on the other side of that, right? And to your point, you were willing to do that for free because that was your understanding. But the problem is that getting the W-9 and then getting some money creates a false equivalency in the artist's brain, right? Oh, if I just do really well or if I'm not a pain in the ass, then I'll get paid.
Right.
And, looking at two beautiful women, it's, the industry for y'all is so much more complicated than it is for a white cis male, right? Who's in his 50s, right? I walk into a room and just by the nature of my very human existence, I'm given authority and command. And so for me, with Crescent City Stage, it's about creating theater and education opportunities, but at its core, it's how do we create a collective union of people who say we value ourselves and look what comes of that because we do. And ultimately, I think it's just better art. Not that it's the art that exists now isn't good. I just think it's maybe different's the right word instead of better. Maybe it's just different art. It feels different because you're watching people who feel sustained. To your point, Fallon, you're watching people who are able to take a day off and maybe take a trip,
Yeah.
like leave the town for a day, which is such a luxury because you're afraid to leave because the phone might ring.
Yep.
Yeah.
The phone ain't ringing.
Yeah.
The phone ain't ringing. Let's go take a trip.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That happens so often where it's just like a course of time that I decide to take a trip somewhere. That's when I get an audition and I have to tape in where that's like not ideal. And I'm like, oh wow, really? This is so
Yeah.
funny.
Book, the joke, I love that SAG acronym from your account. The joke for a long time, certainly in New York, was if you want to book something, book a flight to Europe. Because then the call's going to come. And then, but again, it's that false equivalency too, right?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many Christmases I missed or Thanksgivings I missed because my agents were like, well, if you leave, you won't audition for that co-star one line role on Law and Order. And at the
Yeah.
time it was like $600 a day,
Yeah.
right? And I
Hmm.
missed Christmas. And you know what? I didn't book that role. I didn't get it. And so I
Yeah.
not only missed Christmas, I missed out on what would have been $300 after manager and agent fees and taxes to be on a show that whoop-de-doo, right? It's great, it's fun. But I think if I could go back to my younger self and say, look, the value of your life and family and friends and connection is so much more powerful and meaningful over the long haul than
Yeah.
this one thing that you feel you might miss out on. There will be other opportunities. And if there aren't other opportunities, that's also the industry saying to you, this isn't the right industry, right? If you're a lawyer and you're a litigator and you go into court and you never win cases, you're not going to get to do that for very long,
Right.
Right.
right? If you're a doctor and you keep cutting open the wrong part of the body as a surgeon, you don't get to keep doing it. So the rules
Right.
shouldn't be different just because we're poor artists. Anyway, get me going on a tangent.
Well, I'm curious on a personal level, but also for young actors who are out there, where's that line where you go from doing some free work to build your resume and build experience into then getting to putting a value on your work? Where was it for you?
I think you have to understand how the industry operates, right? Again, I use the word volunteer when you're trying to get footage for your reel because you're not working, right? Working has federal labor laws, it has tax forms that you fill out, you get a paycheck. So for me at the time, Actors Access was the place. Like you could self-submit, and there were hundreds of projects on Actors Access. Like you could spend all day just self-submitting. And I never worked for free. I always asked for something, whether that was $50 or $25 or a lunch and a car ride. I always had to get something for it. But what I did was I was living in LA and I had no real footage to send to producers, and so I went to the Pasadena College of Art and Design. It has an incredible film program, and at the school they've got actual sound stages. And what they would do is the directing students would have student film projects that were shot on these sound stages. And you got paid, I think it was like $75 a day or something, because it was a SAG student film day rate at the time. I did one and then I loved it and they loved me. And so other students were like, hey, would you do dot, dot, dot? And I got some incredible footage out of it. And I ended up shooting a short film called Harmony with Pierre Plessard, who's a French guy, brilliant filmmaker. He lives in Europe now. I don't think he does films anymore, but he ended up shooting this $80,000 short film on 35 millimeter on film. And I got to reprise my role from it, from that student film into this that went into festivals. And now all of a sudden I had 11 minutes of incredible footage that started with, well, $75 day rate that turned into, and I got a SAG scale for that. Because I said, I'm not working for free. I want to be on a SAG contract for this. And I did. And so what I would say to actors today is the industry has changed dramatically. And it isn't important anymore to have, this is my opinion, right? Everybody's going to have their own opinion. I don't think it's as important for you to get your buddies and go in the park and shoot some real footage to have on your Actors Access. Because the reality is you are competing with everybody now because it's all digital, right? Every role can be submitted on by anybody, anywhere, at any time. We don't go into offices anymore. We're not only casting local. When it says local only, it's horseshit. They're lying to you, right? They're saying that because they want you to feel connected. They're casting from wherever to whomever. If the producer's buddy's cousin's nephew's friend's sister is cheap and free and available. And that had nothing to do with the real footage. So for young actors, I would say take classes, always be training, work when you can work on anything and everything, whether that's a grip or doing script, line producing, not just the thing that you want to do. Learn everything you can about the industry you want to be in. If you're a musician or if you want to be a musician and you only know how to play guitar, you better start taking piano lessons, right? So classes, work, never for free, even if it's $25, even if it's a gift card to Trader Joe's, work for value. Don't worry so much about the old school way of doing things because it doesn't exist anymore, right? Even if you've got 10 co-star one-liners on a show, no casting director's watching that.
Right.
They're just not. So why waste your money on it? This idea of you need 7 different headshots. No, you don't need 7 different headshots. You need one good headshot that looks like you. So when they pull you up, a lot of agents, managers, and casting directors are going to get mad at me for this. But when they pull your picture up from the submission, they're not looking to see 6 other pictures of you.
And it's so tiny.
Because 1,800 other people submitted on that same role.
Yeah.
I did a play in LA at Noise Within, Crime and Punishment. Noise Within is a company. They have a company of core actors. So if you weren't in that company, you weren't working for them. But they had this open call for a role because they didn't have somebody in the company that would fit it. And they ended up booking it, and I got in, and I got to do some more work with them. But Craig Belknap, who was a professor at Cal Arts, it's this great old school guy, really kind, generous, and we got to be friends. And I asked him at one point, I was like, how did you even pick me to audition? And he said, we had 12, the numbers are, don't quote me on the numbers are for purposes of the story, but it was over 1,000. It was like 1,200 people submitted for that one role. And on Actors Access, he said, so I was like, what do you do? And he said, well, the first thing you do is if they're not union, you just get rid of them, right? I only want to see union. Now you're down to 600. I don't want anybody that has face tattoos because it doesn't work for the story, right? Or I need somebody who's brunette because the script calls for a brunette. Now you're down to 400. Then you start looking at, does they have a resume and the Actors Access resume? Do they have any credits? No, you're going to get rid of 150 because they've never done a play before. And this is for, a lead role in a play. Now you're down to 250. Still 250 people. You're not going to see 250 people. Then it's, do I know anybody on their resume? If I don't know anybody on their resume, they're gone, right? Any other director, any other theater company, any other play. Then it's, what school did they go to? I've never heard of that school. So then you're whittling it down. You're still in the hundreds. And then you got to see people. I mean, that's just for a play in LA. Imagine what's happening for a film, that has a nationwide, because the three of us can submit on any Actors Access anywhere in the country at any time. And so I think study, get the right material on your Actors Access, listen to your agents about what they're seeing and what they need from you. Take care of your body, yourself, right? Show up, be on time, be prepared, and be proactive about being involved in the industry in any way. There's no TV or film work happening right now. So we can all sit around and complain about there being no TV or film work, or we can take opportunities at Tulane. Or our friends who are shooting a music video need 20 actors. You can say, yeah, I'm happy to do that, but can I get this from you? And I'll show up and do that. So then you're learning. So that's what I would say. That was my long answer.
I love that. That's perfect.
Well, we would love to talk a little bit about Tiny Beautiful Things.
I would too.
So what pulled you towards this play as a director? What about the story called to you?
So I had never heard of the book before the play came across our desk, and what we were looking for small shows that didn't have a specific production aspect that was out of our budget, right? Having to build, the inside of a 2-story apartment. And when I first read it, I thought, wow, this is some powerful stuff because, if you don't know the book, it's real letters from real people, anonymous, and Sugar, who we now know as Cheryl, her responses to those letters on an online forum in 2010 to 2012. So these are real people, real responses that are cobbled together in this evening of theatricality. So when I first read the piece, I was just struck by the stories and the humanity of it. And then we put it to the side. And then when we were programming the season, Liz and I, we just felt like we needed some connective humanity tissue this year, that we needed to program shows that allowed people to come together for a couple of hours and feel like, okay, we're going to be okay. Right. We're all going to be okay. And I think theater, when it's at its best, is not only a mirror up to the society we live in, but it's a reflection of what's behind us that we can't see anymore. And so we can look back and say, yes, this is all a great human experiment and we have to stay connected. And so Tiny Beautiful Things is the perfect encapsulation of humanity because the stories are gut-wrenching, humorous, weird, funny, sad, and it's like, oh, it's this kaleidoscope of humanity, and it fit our model of being able to cast diverse creative teams. It fit our model of being able to front load and prioritize artist wages over pieces of lumber for sets. And for me, as when I took on the directing role, I had a real vision of how I thought that this play could be presented in a way that would be a really powerful evening of theater. And so I subsequently read the book, have studied and seen Cheryl's work. And Cheryl herself is just this incredible author and storyteller. And the book, Tiny Beautiful Things, is sort of an expanded version of the play, right? Because the play can only have so many letters. And so for me, it's an evening of connective tissue and humanity and kind of forgetting about all of the noise that I think is weighing us down, right? It's kind of really hard to navigate the world right now. And this, I think, allows you to escape. It's a nice hour and 20-minute play. And maybe for an hour and 20 minutes, you'll kind of forget that, grocery prices are twice as expensive, or we have that horrible storm that came through yesterday and in a split second becomes so devastating, to people. And so we're kicking the season off with that. And then the rest of our season kind of aligns with that same thought process of Netflix is our escape, right? We can binge watch Netflix or Apple TV. We need to figure out a way to make it that theater can be that same sentiment of come spend an hour and a half, 2 hours with us. It'll feel the same, and you'll get to have this connectivity with your community that's so important.
Yeah, speaking to what you were talking about, the convenience and comfort and safety of just being at home and then also having a Netflix show and being able to curl up on the couch. I always realize after I go see something in person or go see a play, how much more therapeutic that is than sitting at home with a blanket and a candle and feeling like I need to be inside. And then I go out into the world and do that. And I'm like, why don't I do this more? It makes me feel so good.
Yeah, I think it's the one thing that I've noticed not being from here, and one of the things that we work on with Crescent City Stage is we have to do better about letting the community know that this opportunity exists for them. And in that same way, right, so we're not reaching nearly enough people. And that's part of the, you have to have money to spend, the Sanger does an incredible job of marketing. They're on every billboard. They have full page ads. They are everywhere. And they must spend a fortune on that. So how do you reach people to say to them, come spend this time with us? I can't guarantee you anything, but I believe really in my gut that if you come spend an hour and a half with us, and you know this, it's going to have that feeling. It may not be you may not like the story may not be for you, you may not, but you're going to feel something. And my hope is that the next morning over coffee, if you're with somebody or you're meeting a friend, that you have that resonant feeling in the same way that we so deeply have that feeling for 3 weeks during Mardi Gras. Right? That need to be a part of that. How do we replicate that here? And if we're able to do that, then, I mean, we'll be here forever doing this because it will become a need. You will need to do it. And I think post COVID, we're still kind of grappling with how much do we need to be together? Because we can do this, right? We can be on a screen, spend an hour together, but we don't need to be together. I do think we need to be together. And theater is one way to do that. Yeah.
I agree. I was talking to someone yesterday about how when I meet in person with people, it gives me energy. When I meet with people over Zoom, it drains me. And there is something about the screen that it's not the same. It's like there's a barrier. And then also it sucks a little bit of your soul out, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I think I don't know, the sort of arguments with AI and I mean all of that technology is wonderful. Maybe AI is just this generation's cell phone. I remember when cell phones came out in the mid 90s and when there were pagers. I don't know if y'all are old enough to remember.
I remember
You
those.
could have a pager and answering service, right? But the pager would say, "Call Susie. She has a message for you." And then you'd pull over and put a quarter into a payphone and call Susie and be like, "What are we doing?" Like, and then the cell phones came out and it was like this, the world's never going to be the same. And we survived. I wonder if AI is just this generation cell phone. But I think your point is really worth repeating that we need to have connection with each other, not necessarily hugging or physically touching, but we have to be in the same space physically. Otherwise, we lose touch with our humanity. And theater is really, and music, but like films still have that disconnect, except for, like Sinners right now. I come home from rehearsal and the Britannia Theater and the lines around the block for people going in to see, I'm assuming it's Sinners or Thunderbolts, whatever's playing there. And I drive by it and I think, how amazing is that?
Yeah.
That this piece of art is creating this connective, collective need to experience it together. And I don't quite think theater has that pull yet here in the way that Broadway does, or the Sanger to some extent. And if we can breach that barrier, man, it's going to be pretty cool because to your point earlier, Sky, our creative teams aren't just actors. They're designers and they're they're script analysis folks, they're accountants, they're payroll providers, right? One production provides, even on a 4-person show, it provides over 20 jobs that have to be filled by people. 16 of those 20 are never seen because they're not on stage, but it creates opportunity and work. And so, in the same way, because I mentioned Sinners, Sinners employed 500 South Louisianans to shoot that film.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And that's the other part of the connective tissue that I think we lose. And I know you guys do it with your film company. Like, you really make it clear that when we do these things, we're expanding opportunity, not just to the folks you see on screen, but to all of the people it takes to create this stuff. Yeah, so I think we have to be better stewards of ourselves. We have to be better community members to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have to really be curious about what's happening in our community and recognize that the old adage, a rising tide does lift all boats. It doesn't leave anybody behind. But if we don't let that tide come in, not one person can do it. Not one organization can do it.
Yeah, we all have to be pioneers with that. And the human piece is so important because it's part of human nature to be connected to humanity. And I think during COVID, things shifted and people, I don't know if it's like a fear or trauma, probably a combination of both, of like connecting with humans. And there's so much happening in the world. It's like people are even afraid to maybe even be entirely themselves because of the political climate, because of all different opinions that just creates more separation versus just coming to a place of how can we just still love each other even if our opinions are different, you know? And I think that's
Yeah.
where a lot of losses happen or a lot of misconnection because people are being so mean and hateful towards each other just
Mhm.
because of what they believe in. And I think it's just showing us it's just creating more separation. And
Yeah.
that's why the theater is so important because we can all come together under one roof and just watch some beautiful art.
Yeah. Yeah, technology for all of its good is also a lot of bad, right? Because
Mhm.
it gives the things that we're experiencing now, they're not new. There's just a platform for us to be inundated with it,
Yeah.
right? If were a horrible human being before technology, you were just a horrible human being, but nobody knew about it. Now you can post online. You can
Yeah.
go viral for being a horrible human being. And look, I don't think anything should happen to you if you're a horrible human being, but I think technology has given rise to that disconnect of connection, right? And even curiosity, because I'm a TikTok scroller, right? And it's really about disconnection versus connection because I'm disconnecting from the world by scrolling.
Yeah.
And I think we have to, in TV, film, music, fine art, graphic art, those are ways to be expressive and connective. But as the financial gap gets wider, right? We could do a whole other episode on why studios aren't making films anymore. And it's not because of tax credits. When that financial gap gets wider, the people who are at the bottom, it's just survival mode. And so
Mm.
they don't think I can't afford to have entertainment because I don't have dollars to spend outside of. That's the commerce part of it, is that yes, we're a nonprofit, but we still have to make a profit. We still have to make money, right, to
Yeah.
survive and function. And how do you do that? And I think those are all incredibly engaging and exciting questions that I think are part of how we function on a day-to-day basis. And we'll never have the answer, but that's a good thing because we're striving always to create opportunities for folks to gather, and be
Yeah.
together.
Great. I love that.
Just fun, I guess, question about tiny, beautiful things.
Mhm.
What is something the audience won't realize took a serious effort to pull off?
Won't realize?
Or you don't think they'll realize?
Well, I don't want to say it because then it'll give it away.
Okay.
There's a really cool I'll say this. There are, I think they're called Easter eggs. They're like little hidden clues. Is that what an Easter egg is in a movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Easter eggs that for me are special. And for those who see them, it'll be a really kind of fun moment to make the connection.
Mm.
I'll say that.
Did you have any Easter eggs as far as when, you're rehearsing with the cast? Did someone surprise you in a way that you didn't expect when y'all were in rehearsals?
I think they all did. I mean, it's a remarkable, it's a cast that kind of runs the gamut from some folks who are just starting their careers to seasoned TV film actors who haven't been on stage for 20 years. And so there's this breadth of not only just life experience and time in life, and then the exploration of these pieces of material that are dark and concerning and difficult to navigate. I think it was such a joyous, fun, supportive, creative process. I'm going to knock on wood because we're opening tonight. It has been the easiest and most joyous time I've had in a long time producing a show. And I think it has everything to do with everybody, the designers, the stage management team, the actors. So I think that to answer the question specifically, um the trick has been how to create an evening of theater with a play that could be read at a music stand and be just as powerful because the words are so powerful. I sort of feel like this about Shakespeare, right? If you have really good people who can speak and recite Shakespeare, you don't really need anything else because the words are so powerful. They're so good. They're so specific. That's true of a lot of contemporary playwrights as well. So I think the joy for me has been creating the when you get to add in. I should say that James, who's doing my projections, has done Christmas Carol. He's remarkable doing the lighting, created this beautiful kaleidoscope and choreographed lighting plot. And then Donnie Markowitz, who's an Academy Award winner, created original sound with this. And so I got to spend hours in his studio thinking, how do we support this story in a way that's New Orleans? Brendan Jenkins from the Pres Hall Band is our trumpeter. So he played the trumpet for us. So it's this really beautiful collective tissue of New Orleans, because it's all local artists, and then that layering of the technical components on top of these really good stories was, to me, now where we are now, seeing that last night as we now embark on audiences tonight, I'm exceedingly happy. I have no idea what the audiences will think, and we'll find out, we'll find out in about 9 hours.
Mhm. So
Yeah,
exciting. It's
it
so,
is
so
exciting.
exciting. That's beautiful.
Where can people stay connected with you and
Sure.
learn more about Tiny Beautiful Things and Crescent City Stage?
All things considered on there. We're at 6063 Magazine Street, right across from Perlis is our studio. And if the blinds are open and the door is open, come in and say hi. We want this to be a community space of conversation and connection. And so we produce at Marquette, but CrescentCityStage.com has all of our studio classes on there, how you can buy tickets, how you can get involved and support us from a philanthropic perspective. And then we've got a great season for the rest of the year. Holmes and Watson in September, which is a feminist take on the Sherlock Holmes stories, which is a really fun Kate Hamill script. And then we're going to do Christmas Carol again, hopefully with the whole same team to wrap up the holiday season.
That's beautiful. Well, Michael, it has been such a pleasure having
Thank
you
you
on
all.
our show today. And thank you for sharing your wisdom, your talent, your voice, your energy, everything. It's really an honor. And we're so happy to have someone like you in our community that's really bringing opportunities and inspiration and hopefully lots and lots of curiosity to this community. So for that, we are so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you for what y'all are doing. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks for tuning in to Off Script. If you love this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us for more unfiltered conversations with the creatives shaping the Southeast film market. Until next time, keep creating, keep pushing, and keep telling your story your way.